Ever thought you're sometimes going through the motions? Gary and I have both been there. And that's why we created the East West Coaching Podcast.
Welcome to Anna and Gary's East West Coaching.
I'm Anna, and joining me is Gary. We are here to chat about life, love, and everything in between. Whether you're feeling stuck, frustrated, or just looking for a little more spark in your life, we got you covered. Let's dive in.
And the last time we talked about loss, and specifically we talked about the death of a loved one and how that affects us. But we were saying just before we started recording that it's not just the death of somebody, of a person, that can set in a cycle of grief. Actually, there's a whole host of different things that we grieve about, and each of those things can actually set in motion that grief process. All the things that we talked about, the depression and the anger. And I think the things that people don't necessarily think about, but that can have a profound effect on their lives and how they process. And I think it's important for us to recognize when those times might be, because if we don't recognize them, we may not realize that we need to do something about it, or allow ourselves and be compassionate to ourselves and allowing ourselves to go through that process. If somebody dies, everybody around you and you yourself can often say, it's okay. This big event in our lives, in my life, is going to take some time to get over. And if we can allow ourselves to do that, then we can be very gentle with ourselves and come through the process. However, if it's something else that triggers this grief process, we may not realize what's happening. And instead of being compassionate, we may be really hard on ourselves and chastise ourselves. And, we often talk about the voices in our heads. They come back and they're very loud, or we don't recognize it in somebody else. Mm. So can you think of any times when this might happen to us in our lives, when this grief process may set in place?
I think I can. For example, it could be when a relationship ends. It could be when, your children are growing and then they leave home. Maybe you lose your job, or you lose your house, or any loss. It could be any loss that is important for you.
Yeah, I think that the ones that you've mentioned are really important. And those changes in life circumstance, like you say, loss of a job, your children leaving home, and you have this empty nest syndrome, that they have a massive effect on us. And of course, if you go through divorce or separation of somebody that you've been with for a long time, can leave you feeling distraught and having to process all of that. Even something as simple as losing an item. So, for example, if you lose your keys and you start searching for them, lots of things kick into place. It could be the keys for the car, and you have to get somewhere, and then you're angry. Where are they? And so you go through that grief process. You blame yourself. If only I'd done that. If only I'd done something different. Or my neighbor knocked on the door just when I was just when I was putting my things down, and it was their fault, because had they not knocked on the door, I'd have done my usual thing with the keys, and they disturbed my pattern. And all of that happens, can be within split seconds or within a very short amount of time. And so we go through that process. I think lots of times when we don't realize it, and maybe it's not so important. And so we can, if you haven't had somebody close to you die, you can actually recognize that process with smaller things in your life. But the idea of getting divorced, or your partner leaving you, who's been with you for a long time, or whatever it is, you absolutely go through all of that, and it can be as devastating as somebody dying. In fact, I've heard people say for them it was worse than somebody dying, Because, if somebody close to them has died, their mum or their dad or whoever it is, they can say, oh, well, maybe they died of old age and we knew their time was coming. That's the normal process. But then if somebody leaves you, yeah, I thought they were going to be with me forever. This is not how it should be. And a whole load of other complicated layers come on top of that. Society, what will, depending on what society you're from, you should, the idea that you shouldn't get divorced. You shouldn't get divorced. You stay with somebody forever. You have to make a go of it no matter what. And so then you're carrying this guilt with you. Or if you wanted them to stay with you, and you think, what did I do? What could I have done differently?
Mm.
And the anger can be really there if they've done something to damage the relationship and you're blaming them. Other times when we can, I think, go through this process of grief that we don't realize. You talk about losing a job. Absolutely. And again, trying to get our heads around if we were released from our job, we lost our job, then who's to blame there? Was it the company? Was it somebody who we didn't get on with? Was it my own behavior? Especially if we don't get a replacement job quite quickly, we can carry that grief can go on for a long time as we're trying to process everything that's going on there. And I think that just recognizing that it could be grief that we're feeling when these unexpected feelings come up can allow us time to be kind to ourselves and just go, okay, that's what's happening. This is why I feel angry. Because sometimes we don't understand why we get these sudden feelings. They just come like waves and they're unexpected. They're out of the blue. And what do we do with a feeling that appears to have no relation to anything else?
That's a good question.
I think we feel a little bit lost. And again, it comes back, then we kind of self-blame. We say, I should snap out of this. This is not right. I shouldn't be like this. Okay, so what's going on really? Maybe instead of trying not to be angry or not to be frustrated or not to be down or depressed, we can say, this is what is going on. So for myself, I am the end of the school year. I'll be moving country, moving from China to Hungary, Budapest. And I'm enjoying saying the word Budapest. Hope you noticed that. And part of me, my brain was saying, you should be excited about this, Gary. This is a new opportunity. This is going to be a whole new country to explore, a whole new area. The possibilities are going to open up to you. But I wasn't feeling excited. I was feeling quite flat and down. And as I processed it, I realized I was starting to mourn. I was starting to grieve. It's the anticipatory grief of leaving China because I love it here. There is so much I love about this place. The culture, the life, all of that, my friends, my job. And I'm looking ahead to Hungary. And as I look ahead to Hungary, I'm also thinking, and I'm leaving all this behind. And once I'd realized what that process was, I could just sit with it and allow myself to work through some of those complicated feelings and emotions that were sitting inside of me. And that was really useful.
Yeah, I think you said something important. Maybe in some situation like yours, you tend to not sit there. Okay, I don't want to think about it. I'll deal with it later on or whatever. Yeah, but maybe you need to process it now, I mean, it's only fair that I'm feeling like this because I know all the things I'm leaving behind, but I haven't got a clue what I'm gonna find. You're not thinking about, the positive in that moment. You're thinking about what your loss, what you're leaving behind, all the things you care about. It's good to sit with it and work with it.
And another one of the thoughts that I had was, if people see that I'm not happy about going to a new place, will they think I'm ungrateful? Well, how will they be judging me if I'm going, oh, this really hurts? Because lots of people could come to me saying, oh, Gary, this is exciting, isn't it? And I was nodding my head but not feeling it. And so there was that process as well until I started allowing myself again just to tell people, well, yeah, I am, but also this is true as well. The two things are true at the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not saying that I have a terrible life. I'm not saying this is a terrible move, but I'm allowed to feel this way.
Yes, totally. The two things can exist at the same time.
And so I think one of the worst things we can do as friends or supporters is tell people you shouldn't feel this way. You should be looking forward to it. You should be grateful. That just piles on the guilt, actually.
Yeah, but then it's not up to others to judge what we should or we shouldn't be feeling, doing, behaving. Everyone is so unique. They will deal with whatever it is in their own way, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Other types of loss are the loss of pets and animals.
Yeah.
And especially if you haven't lived with an animal and somebody comes and says, my dog has died or my cat has died, I think it can be really difficult to appreciate the bonds that can be built between an animal and a human. And actually, those animals can leave a massive hole in our lives.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that a real close bond and a knowledge between, especially animals like dogs and cats, can be built up between them and their owners. And the sensitivities, and the owner will notice things about the animals that nobody else will notice. That they'll notice a change in how the animal holds itself or how it acts. And the same with the other way around. The animal, it's been demonstrated now so clearly, is that lots of different animals pick up on emotions of humans that other humans don't even pick up. I've seen some wonderful videos recently of horses reacting differently to different people. The same horse pushing somebody away, and then somebody who needs to have somebody gentle with them, it changing how it behaves with them.
Yes.
And so if one of these animals dies, no wonder people feel bereft.
For some people, their animals are really important as if they were a human being.
Well, yeah, sometimes they're better than human beings because they don't judge. There's no judgment at all.
So true.
I put my dog in kennels, and when I come back and my dog sees me, my dog does not say to me, where have you been? Look at you. I'm not going to talk to you. My dog is really happy to see me. My dog is delighted. It's wagging its tail and barking and rolling over as if it's the greatest thing on earth to see me. If I put my children in kennels or into boarding while I went on holiday, I know what response I would get when I returned.
So true. Yeah. Animals seem to have more positive feelings than negative. They more. It's like they are these forgiving beings. They don't keep grudges.
No,
Very innocent souls. Yeah.
they live in the moment.
Yeah.
They don't look like they anticipate anything. They don't look back as far as we can tell. And so whatever they feel, and whatever you see, it's because it's that moment in time.
Yes, they can't even understand if you tell them off like 10 minutes later when when they've already done something. It's like, why are you angry at me now? And they're probably wondering.
While you're picking up the toilet roll that they've pulled all over the place. Yes. So we've talked a lot about the effect that a loss can have on us. Can a loss bring anything positive?
Hey everyone, before we get back to our chat, I wanted to give you a quick shout out to where you can find us, as well as more resources and articles. You can find out more about Gary at www.thinkwellnow.net, and you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Anna Amoroso. We will include all the links in the video description below. Please consider liking and subscribing to this channel to help us in reaching more people who might value this type of content, and click the bell to get news of our latest podcast. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Growth comes to mind. Resilience, strength.
Oh, go on, say some more. When you say growth and resilience, what do you mean?
Well, once you've been through those experiences of loss, once you have realized that you're feeling grief and you're sad and you're angry or whatever it is you're feeling, obviously you need to move forward in a way, right? And you always learn something or change something about yourself in that process, I think. So for example, let's say when my daughter grew up and then she left home, I'm here doing this also thanks to that, because I found myself thinking, okay, I don't have a purpose anymore. I feel empty. What am I going to do now with my life? And thanks to that, I discovered, well, I went through the process of grief. Then I, took the courage to explore something else, to find a new purpose, a new passion, something that would give me meaning. And so thanks to that, I started researching, doing whatever I could to find a new way. And thanks to that, I'm here now and I'm stronger and I understand that's part of life, and I've become more resilient and more independent. So in a way, it's all been good. You grow, you change, and you move on and life goes on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, isn't it? When we are put in situations that we don't necessarily want and we don't necessarily ever wish upon ourselves, but we're thrust there, we have a choice. We can allow ourselves to simply look back and to wish away our lives, wish it was the same as it was. That's understandable, because when we do that, we're thinking, my life was wonderful then. And we're in a way, we're appreciating what we had. We're remembering the love that we had, all those fantastic memories, which is great. Then what do we do after that? And like you say, it put you in a position where you said, what now? What am I going to do with it? And you chose, like you say, to think, oh, I've been relying on my daughter. I've been relying on my role as a mother. I'm more than a mother. I could be so much more. And then you went to explore who you really were.
Yeah.
Or who you are becoming, even, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's more than a mother. That's not just who you are.
Yes. Yes. That sometimes we just get so embedded with our identities, that we think we're only that. We believe we're only that aspect, and it's not true.
And you were comfortable in that role. It was a really comfortable role for you. And then you were put in this uncomfortable place. And it was that discomfort that pushed you to find something else that you really cared about, that you're passionate about, that you want to go and research about. I remember when we first met and you told me all of the different things that you were reading and watching, and how you were just so in love with the whole learning about what it means to grow and to be and to develop.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful to to have found this path, mostly because I really learned so much about myself and how to change, how to grow, how to become stronger, all the things about personal development. You always have a choice, you're in control, and it's so great and empowering.
And then for other people, what they've discovered is, so for example, if they've had a spouse or a child who's died of a particular disease and there hasn't been much research around it, they have thrown themselves into either researching or getting groups of people together who need that support. And so they've created support groups, or they've created charities to raise money in order to further investigate and put funds where there was no funding before. And so suddenly they discover a meaning behind even the death, so that they may say that their death was not for nothing. It's heartbreaking when I think about this person, that they're no longer with me. This is not where it finishes. I'm going to remember them by doing this. And suddenly they have created a meaning, and real good can come out of that. And so many groups and charities and communities have been set up because of this.
Humans are really resourceful in the moment of grief, or they can be resourceful because of that. It depends what you want to create afterwards out of that.
And so while we never wish death on those people we love, actually we can make sure that something good comes out of that. And it could be something even, I want to be careful how I say this, I want to say even greater. I don't mean that it replaces the person, because nothing can ever replace the person who has died. But if a movement happens because of it, you think, wow, look at this. This would never have occurred except for the fact that I acted in this way because, and I think, this is almost a fundamental of life. So everybody knows by now that I follow the Christian faith, and part of the story is Jesus dies. Well, that's not what the disciples wanted. That's not what his closest friends wanted. They thought that was the end. And yet look now at how many people know, even if they don't believe anything, but they know about Jesus. And so much good has come, from that. All sorts of organizations and charities because of that event. And I think there's lots of different things. If you look at Gandhi, and how he was martyred, but the work that he did grew exponentially because of that. Same with Martin Luther King and a whole load of other people who were killed. And you think, gosh, that's not what we want. And yet societies, communities, and groups have got stronger because of it. They haven't got weaker. So it doesn't have to be the end. So I think this is about hope.
Yeah.
Would you like to say any final words as we wrap this up, Anna?
I would say that whatever happens to you, you have the strength to get through it and to get on the other side and become stronger.
We do not know what can happen. We do not know what is ahead, but we can have a hand in creating it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's probably a good place for us to stop. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Gary.
Pull up, I got 5 wishes on a Friday. I know y'all different, y'all popping bottles in broad day. So much cameras, I gotta move in a small way.